Welcome to the channel again. As you may see, I've slightly changed the name to African Diaspora Retirement Living. And it's be focusing on, my living as an African who was formerly living in the UK and who is now spending quite a bit of his time living on the African continent. For me, namely Badagry, Lagos, Nigeria. And in fact, I'm actually filming from the front of the estate I live in, Peridot Estate. This is the front of my house, my accommodation. Anyway, what are we going to speak about today? Very briefly, not taking too much time. I just want to explore the concept of retiring back home for an African. And today I'll look at the topic, what is home? Where is home? Where is home for me? I was born in the UK. I grew up in the UK. I lived in the UK to the age of 14. My parents came back to Nigeria. I had my part of my secondary education, my university education, and I worked in Lagos for a number of years before going back to the UK, training as a social worker and working there for quite a couple of decades, and coming in and out of Nigeria, and finally going back to Nigeria before I took a slight early retirement and doing a number of projects. And now officially I'm retired. I went back to UK just before I retired, sorted out my things, and now that I'm officially retired, I'm spending quite a bit of my time living on the African continent, probably about 6 to 8 months of the year. Now, so back home, to me, a big chunk of my back home, therefore, is Africa, and not just Nigeria. I'm a Pan-Africanist, so Africa in general. Africa is made up of a lot of countries. It's not just one country, it's a lot of countries, a continent made up of over 50 countries. And contrary to the media, many of those countries are actually relatively peaceful, safe to live in, and very affordable. And so I always knew that when I did retire, I was going to spend a lot of my years on the African continent simply because it would be cheaper for me. I would get a better quality of life living in a place like Lagos, Nigeria, than living in the UK if I was retired. However, back home does also at certain times mean the UK. I love the UK during late spring, early summer as a whole generally, though it can be a bit expensive, and early autumn. Autumn, probably all of autumn, but I can't stand the winter. So that means, although I regard UK as back home, I have friends and family there, it's seasonal. Just as being back home in Africa is seasonal. So I'm a seasonal person. I remember that program when I was growing up called Man in a Suitcase. I loved it. The idea of having your suitcase and traveling on about. My partner, on the other hand, needs a base. So that's why we've compromised and said we will have two bases. Lagos, Nigeria, one base, although she's based in Abuja, and then UK. But I also have another home, another place I call home that I've been to quite a lot, and that is Portugal. I love Portugal, particularly Lisbon, particularly the Algarve, part of Porto. I love Portugal. Yes, don't get me wrong, I know Portugal has I wouldn't say a dark history of slavery and colonialism. They were actually the first European country to bring enslaved people from Africa and sell them in Europe. But despite that, Portugal has a human feel to it. It's a country that is not pretentious, and it's also affordable as well, relatively affordable. Obviously, now that the Europeans have discovered Lisbon and Algarve, a lot of Portuguese are in riots saying prices are going up, but it's relatively livable. And before the whole Brexit thing, my plan was to live in Portugal for 6 months, Africa 6 months, and then pop into the UK to see friends and family and do my annual checkup. But obviously, the British people had spoken. Don't know what they spoke about, but they have spoken. They're now regretting it, to saying they want to leave Europe, and so that put paid to that plan. However, I know I can go in for 3 months of the year. I think it's 3 months of the year. You go in for 3 months, you have to leave for another 3 months and go back. So I know I can do that twice a year. So that is sort of home to me. So basically, for me, as a Pan African, as somebody who is of British birth and who has lived and worked in Britain, as somebody who defines himself as a Afropean, home is varied for me. I have quite a few homes, places I can stay, places where the heart is. And I think that's a big thing that Africans who are thinking of returning back to Africa, having lived in the West, need to think about. Home may not just be one place. Home can be several places. And as for me, home is several places. And I'm enjoying it now that I'm retired. I'm free. I am unshackled. I can live where I want to live within my income. And actually, that means I can live in quite a few places. And as this YouTube channel continues, I'll be showing you my African diaspora retirement living in different places I call home. So take care. Enjoy the weekend. So enjoy the week. And please subscribe, like this channel, and share. And I hope you will come back next week for another drop of some exciting my point of view comments about being of African heritage and living my retirement years. Bye for now.